So, about that change that was supposed to completely upset the order, yeah, no, McLaren are still strong, maybe even stronger. But quite frankly, people don't care about that. They're caring about the other things that happened, including two drivers crashing out in ways that you might not have expected. But more on that later. McLaren enjoyed a near-perfect weekend in Barcelona, one of the few teams with a straightforward race to boot, and I think it'll put all the cheating allegations to bed because now it's quite clear. McLaren really built a strong, solid car. Deal with it. Maybe it did bring some other teams closer together in their own rights, but in terms of McLaren, we got a front row, we got a 1-2, with Oscar leading the charge, with 0.2 of an advantage in Q3, and that is the biggest gap from first to second this entire season. It just shows how close it's been. They both had excellent strategies, no real complaints there, and it was just completely straightforward. There were no reasons for McLaren to be worried at all. And with Oscar, the safety car, that didn't affect him whatsoever. He was able to get a good strong start against Lando, and he got his 5th win of the season. He's now up to 7, just 1 behind Daniel Ricciardo, and he's looking really set, Oscar, to become one of the most successful Australian drivers of all time. Could he eventually be right up there with the likes of Alan Jones or even Jack Brabham? Well, quite frankly, all bets are off, because he's only 25. No, he's not even 25. He's in his 3rd season. This is crazy. He could be around for over a decade. But yeah, that's my boy for you. He's now extended his lead in the championship to around 10 points. That is really, really good. And over Max, it's near 50. 2 race wins nigh on in his pocket against the Dutchman. And you might be wondering how I feel about Lando. Well, quite frankly, considering where he is in the championship, he's still in the hunt, and how badly Max's race turned out to be, Lando's going to be coming away from this weekend more than happy. He will take P2 with both hands, because this triple header has been a really, really good one for him. Sure, he was ultimately slower than Piastri, and Max did get him at the start, but Norris didn't madly try to get it back that place. He played the long game, thinking of the title. He did get Max back later on. Smart. And from there, he matched Piastri's pace and came home cleanly. And considering what happened to Max at the end, yeah, I don't think Lando's going to mind one bit that he was P2. Because look to where Lando was this time last year. Had you told 2024 Norris that he would, in just a few months, be 39 points ahead of Max Verstappen in a Formula 1 World Championship, he would have just laughed you out the door. Yeah, both McLaren drivers, they're smiling today. But come on, everyone's looking to Sauber. Sauber, both drivers, I would say, the team. Absolute winners with Nico Hulkenberg. This is his best race result since before his sabbatical. This German has not lost any single iota of talent, and he is one of the oldest drivers on the grid. Hulkenberg, he just pulled off a completely vintage drive, even though he got humbled in qualifying by Bortoleto. What a comeback! Because that start, he vaulted several cars on the opening lap to boot, and he stayed within the top 10 on genuine pace, and then the team, they executed a really aggressive strategy. He had an early first pit stop to undercut rivals, and he capitalised on the car's upgrades for Spain, which clearly worked. Sauber had a really big upgrade package, and it turns out to have produced some results where the car is a lot more planted, it's got a bit more pace. And on top of that, him being humbled by Bortoleto meant that he had plenty of soft tyres to choose from when he did make his second stop. He had fresh rubber, and he could go on the warpath. That sight of him passing Lewis Hamilton on pure merit, although there are some claims that he might have had a damaged floor, the visuals will speak for themselves. Nico was on the move. He then went up to P5, and that's 10 points to Sauber. Sauber now have 16 points. They are now not P9, they are 8th in the Constructors' Championship. I'm also going to give credit to Gabi here as well. He narrowly missed out on Q3, he started 12th, it was really convincing. But as Nico undercut those around him, Bortoleto got undercut himself and lost track position, but he was encouraged by the car's strong pace. And Bortoleto was subjected to team orders to allow Nico pass, but he was saying that he's not bothered by that, Bortoleto. He can see firsthand that that car, those upgrades, they work. And if the circumstances do afford him an opportunity, there could be a chance for him to score a couple of points in the not-too-distant future. And I reckon that Hulkenberg and Bortoleto, once that car gets even quicker, they'll be a force to be reckoned with. That will be a really, really strong pairing. And as for Sauber, this could be their best season since 2022. This is such a huge turnaround. Jonathan Wheatley, Mattia Binotto, oh, they're cooking with gas now. And then we have George Russell. Unfortunately for Mercedes, TD18 didn't nobble them like many pundits and myself feared. And whilst the W16 is proving to be like a paper tiger in being incredibly strong but fragile, George was back in the top 5 again. Sure, it wasn't easy securing P4, he did admit that he was being picked off by the Ferraris early on, so he wasn't really competitive then. But later on, when he put on the C2 medium tyres, the car came alive, as did Antonelli, but as we'll discuss later on, it wasn't to be for the young Italian. But as for George, he was able to be somewhat competitive, and Mercedes have been able to recover from their dreadful Monaco weekend and their really uninspiring Imola weekend. Them removing parts of the rear suspension, tweaking up a couple of the other upgrades, and the hot weather didn't really bother them as much as people feared, that they're actually kind of handy. And let's not forget, George was part of the calamity after the restart, because with Max, Russell dived to the inside, slight contact was ensued, then they touched even harder into turn 5, leaving George utterly bewildered. And the world. Him being able to get more consistent top 5 finishes, and Verstappen crashing out like that with only having a point to his name, 1 point to 12? George is catching up with Max again. Russell won't mind beating Verstappen in the championship even if it isn't for the title. It would certainly be a lot of bragging rights, who's to say? But yes, the hunt for second place in the Constructors now could be very interesting. But yeah, George, not too bad. Mercedes, they'll take this. As will Leclerc, because Ferrari did benefit from these new front ring regulations in my imagination. They're in the hunt for podiums now, and Charles was on song here, now having back-to-back podium finishes to boot, the 3rd one of the season. And it became very, very clear that the momentum is squarely with the Monegasque, because not too long into the race, Leclerc got team orders in his favour to pass Lewis Hamilton. Yeah, Leclerc's strategy, it was perfectly solid, a two-stopper, but it came alive with the safety car, because he had fresh rubber, fresh softs, against Max Verstappen on those C1 tyres. Why on earth would you put C1 tyres on Red Bull? Seriously. Just because you had them. You changed them just for the sake of it, just to be with the cool kids who were coming in for a pit stop. Come on. Then, of course, there was that altercation down the start-finish straight, but, it turned out to be nothing really, just an incident. Ferrari are now somehow in 2nd place. The Tifosi are left completely confused. I've seen so many comments going, we're so bad this year. How come we're runners-up in the team standings? This makes no sense whatsoever. Tifosi, in the comments, are you happy with this? Because I'm pretty sure the country of France right now are very, very happy. They ate well with the likes of Hadjar and Gasly being both winners. La Marseillaise really intensified, but we'll start off with Isack, because come on, this is his 4th points finish in 5 races. Over 20 points to his name now. He's now, Isack, in the top 10. P9, ahead of Ocon. And he was able to stay out of trouble, even as he said, plenty of overtakes and collisions unfolded around him. Although Hulkenberg's late charge on fresh tyres completely gobbled him up without much fight back, he still brought the car home P7, which the team rightly called a very strong result for the rookie. I keep telling you, if this kid can get 30 points this year to his name for Racing Bulls, then I think this will lock him in within the Red Bull environment, the wheelhouse, for a good long time. This is one of the breakout stories of the season, probably more interesting and surprising than Kimi Antonelli's lick of speed. And that fan altercation he had in Monaco, who cares? He's bringing results. He's a story. People are really excited about him, and he's bringing home points to a team that really, really need it. They're now P6 in the championship, and they are closing in on Williams, slowly but surely. They've got a leader now, so who's to say where he could wind up? Confidence? Oh, Isaac's got that in spades. He's a really consistent talent with a hugely remarkable sense of maturity. He's come on song since he's arrived in Formula 1. It's just remarkable, considering where he was this time last year. And then there was Pierre Gasly, and this was bittersweet. He did fulfill the 3 things Briatore expects of his drivers in being fast, somewhat. Don't crash, score points, but P8, unfortunately, wasn't enough to prevent Alpine from falling to last place in the team standings. Sauber gladly handing over to them, okay, there you go, Alpine, the wooden spoon. Yeah, I don't think Flavio really wanted to see that, his team now dead last. But then the late safety car provided him a lifeline, him timing his second stop to perfection, and he praised the team's call, and he also emphasised, though, that Alpine must keep working hard. This weekend was crucial. Pierre, he did act like a leader, and if he can band the team together, this might be enough to provide Flavio just cause to maintain him for next year and beyond. You know, instead of giving in to temptation due to various other reasons other than to do with performance or political power. But yeah, that video that I did on Friday, I hope it ages like milk. I hope that Pierre can flourish here and actually find a new lease of life, get back on song where he was at the end of last year. But come off it. When we're talking about drivers on song, Alonso was determined to score points at his home race, and he did just that. He also benefited from Max's penalty. He came away with 9th place, 2 points. He'll take this with both hands, as will the team. Morale boosting. And if the rumours regarding Stroll are correct, then maybe Alonso's old reputation of being a teammate killer just come round again. Yeah, it wasn't an easy way into points because he got a massive lick of understeer in turn 5, but despite the setback, you gotta admit, Fernando was making so many overtakes, and that feistiness today did his reputation justice. Yeah, before the safety car came out, he wasn't destined for points. He did stop before then, but it did prove to be the game changer for him. In those last 6 laps, he overtook 3 cars. Probably one of his best drives in quite a long while in terms of spirit and just guts. I'm just so relieved Fernando's found some form and he's now no longer got a 0 next to his championship standing. Yes, he admits, Alonso and the team admits it, that the pace isn't where they want it to be in terms of consistency, but they were able to make the most of an opportunity, which is kind of rare this year because you could easily argue that Fernando was denied points on quite a few occasions due to bad luck or bad timing in terms of strategy. The old guard this weekend, wow, okay, they're really representing. And then we get to the mess section, and you might think that this is generous, but let's just say that Liam's race, it wasn't dull. He twice battled wheel-to-wheel with Albon, one bold overtake attempted resulted in contact, and it nudged Albon wide, and because Williams decided it didn't like its front wings, cycled through them so much, Alex had to retire the car. And Liam was involved in all of this. He then had a couple of cheeky moments with Oliver Behrman, but throughout all of that, you may think that Liam would be subjected to penalty after penalty, but no! The New Zealander, he didn't get a single time penalty whatsoever. He was within a whisker of P10. Another points finish off the back of his 4 points from Monaco. But unfortunately, he couldn't stop a rampaging Spaniard on his home circuit. Yeah, it just wasn't meant to be. It was close, but no cigar. He's regaining the confidence that he lost in those first 2 races with Red Bull Racing, and it means that he can be of some use to the team. Right now, Isack Hadjar has got him good. The Frenchman has completely licked, trounced the likes of the Kiwi, but right now I don't think Lawson cares. He wants to prove that he's got some fight and spirit within him, that he can rebound within a couple of months, and that maybe he might be worth keeping next year, especially if it turns out that Yuki Tsunoda is shown the door at the end of the season. Hadjar may get the promotion up next year, and then Lawson can step in as the Bastion leader yardstick for Arvid Lindblad, because Arvid had a great F2 feature race himself. He might be in contention for the championship, even if it doesn't matter to his overall super license points haul. But either way, Liam actually did something. He fought hard, he gave it a go, and he wasn't the run responsible. He didn't get any penalties, and I'm now really happy to maybe think that next year, apart from Yuki Tsunoda, or at least within the Red Bull Junior fold, everybody lives. And you might think I'm being generous with Franco Colapinto, also calling him one of the drivers, but I personally believe that Franco may have been destined for a solid Q2 position had his car not bugged out on him, because at one point in qualifying I saw him ahead of Pierre Gasly, albeit by a 10th, but considering where he was in the first couple of races acclimating to the A525, I think he'd be happy with that. Had he qualified a bit higher, he might have had a chance for a point. He finished P15, but Colapinto's race turned out to be just learning and coping, learning the first-hand effects of riding behind cars in dirty air, and on the tyres. This could be very important for races later in the year perhaps, and at one stage, he did show decent pace, which he described being better than earlier in the weekend, but then overviewed his afternoon as disappointing. Having said that though, he once again was able to keep the car out of trouble. He didn't crash it, and he was able to just learn, get some laps on the board, understand the car, and therefore gain some good comprehension with the amount of time he's been able to be afforded. That you feel like Alpine are learning their lesson. That 5-race plan, that ain't happening. I could easily see that Franco will be seeing out the rest of the season, so he has got that little bit more room to breathe. And you might be wondering, well, where was all this patience law with Jack Doohan, eh? Why is that? How come you're being so fair to the Argentinian, but you weren't with the Australian? And considering your boy's Australian, what's with all the double standards? Well, I could maybe try and explain that with the fact of preparation. Jack Dillon, he had plenty of preparation within the Alpine fold. Franco, he's only had a couple of months. The Imola weekend was his first chance to be in the A525 because he wasn't at pre-season testing. Franco got thrust into it from a completely different environment in the form of Williams, so it's been really hard for the kid, especially with the worldwide media attention, the country of Argentina backing him, and this sudden rise to fame, stardom, and riches, in comparison to what he had before just 12 months ago. It must be really jarring for the kid. Jack had years within Alpine to find something out, whereas Franco's just had weeks. So I think for the sake of all rookies who may hope to have a chance with Alpine in the not-too-distant future, that they might learn a thing or two. But I do think that if Franco doesn't provide something in terms of points by the end of the season, then Flavio may have to look long and hard about what he does with his drivers. I won't make any conclusions right now. It's too early in the season for that. But it's something to consider, maybe at the end of the year. But for now, Franco, he's just needing to learn. And I do think he will score. It just may take a little bit more from both him and the team. And then Lewis Hamilton. This was a tough one. Even though Lewis's Sunday was a grind, Saturday proved to be actually pretty good for Lewis. Him previously citing qualifying being his weakness in this era of machine, he was actually pretty good, almost in line for being on the second row in P3. But that balance and harmony just completely disappeared for the race. Because after he got passed by Leclerc, being asked to let the monogas through, he completely fell off. He was nowhere in terms of the front gaggle of the likes of the two McLarens and Verstappen, and then a cheeky Leclerc. And then Hamilton was caught by the likes of Hulkenberg at the restart. There was just the tyre differential. Then there were reports of claiming that he had a damaged floor throughout the Grand Prix, so that limited his fight back. It was just not a good look for Lewis. After such high hopes in Q3 of maybe of turning a corner, that maybe qualifying might have been a decent shout for him, it wasn't capitalised in the race. Then you had those couple of little bits and pieces of miscommunication with Adami, although much less dramatic than it was in Monaco. They're still there. It will persist. And sometimes it's the little things that mount up to become really, really big things. Just the fundamentals, the little stuff about downshifts and how Lewis had told Adami something, but then Adami kept repeating that he hadn't heard it, or do this, and then Lewis goes, I already did it. And then you just felt like, ugh. It's that kind of stuff. I know that many people will be saying that, oh, come on, Nico was on completely fresh tyres. But at the same time, that shot of a Sauber overtaking Lewis will be used by the naysayers against the seven-time world champion in terms of, is Lewis Hamilton washed? You put up that picture and say, yes, that is too harsh. Yes, his disappointment was absolutely evident, but there were some positives to take away from this, including qualifying. Ferrari are fundamentally back in the game. The technical directives have helped them bring them right back into play. They are now second in the constructors. Lewis isn't that far behind Charles Leclerc in the championship standings. There is some potential for a little bit of an upswing, but it does have to come really quickly. But hey, a qualifying little bit of a W does save him from being labelled here this weekend as a loser. And we do get to those losers in Lance Stroll. Oh dear. I would put Lance in the dark bit, but given the rumours surrounding him, and considering that unlike Qatar 2023 we didn't have any visual evidence to back it up, I therefore cannot put him in the dark bit because it's not been validated. It will have to do in the losers section because, well, he did really lose out because he didn't start the race due to some kind of flare-up in terms of his wrist injury from a couple of years ago before 2023 started. Which, to be fair, looked pretty gnarly, and the recovery from that incident just a couple of weeks before the first Grand Prix was rapid, maybe a little bit too rapid. This could be an ongoing situation, which I wouldn't be surprised if this does turn out to be true. Then maybe this could be the reason why Lance Stroll retires from Formula One, due to injuries that are therefore too persistent for him to be able to continue at the upper echelon of competition. He might have to just look at options elsewhere that are less intense than the realms of Formula One. He will remain an ambassador of Aston Martin racing, and this might give Fernando Alonso a stay of execution. And also may finally give Felipe Drugovich an opportunity to do something with his reservemanship of the Aston Martin team, because he has been made available for the Canadian Grand Prix, even though it will be clashing with Le Mans. So it's a case for Felipe, well, what do I do? Do I want to have an opportunity for glory within Le Mans? Or do I want to maybe be somewhere in the bottom 10 of the Canadian Grand Prix? Take your pick. So yeah, Lance is currently having some surgery to correct this because apparently this has been ongoing for the last 6 weeks. I won't be going into too much detail in this video. Do like the video if you want me to make the video more in detail about the rumours surrounding Stroll, because I do want to make that video, but I want to make sure that you want to see it too. So, like the video. I'll round things off by saying that the team made a statement that, yes, Lance was upset, but the chat has been growing. The fact that Lance got a telling off from the stewards for not reporting to the correct locale post-session weighing indicates something might be off. That maybe this injury and the source of it was not just a persistent little twinge that just won't go away, that maybe it was exacerbated due to some kind of tantrum for not being as fast as Fernando, maybe upwards of half a second slower than Fernando. But yeah, okay, the foam is out for this one, but it is definitely also foam for thought, so we might elaborate on this in a longer 20-minute yap or something like that. Who am I kidding? It's gonna be 25. But anyway, let's move on to Max, because you're dying to know. And immediately, I got a ping on my phone saying that Max has made some kind of formal apology, so that is something to consider here. Okay, how do I put this? Well, before the restart, Max was brilliant. The team were on the verge of making a 3-stop strategy actually work. A 3-stopper? In this economy? Because the only way that 3 stops work these days is if the tyres really fell off a cliff, or you're back in the 2000s where Michael Schumacher, Ferrari and Bridgestones could make that work every single weekend, quite frankly, because Michael was just that good. But then the safety car came out and they needed Red Bull to make a 4th stop. Huh? What? And what tyre did you have left? The C1. The C1, right? You're kidding. The tyre that everyone despises, even more so than the C6 tyre, which gives out nothing, but then the C1 doesn't really give anything at all. It just feels like Red Bull just did it for the sake of it. They may as well just kept Max out. I quite frankly think that even with slightly worn C3s, Max would have been able to make them work somewhat to... Yeah, maybe he would have lost out to Charles Leclerc for 3rd, but he would have been able to keep George behind him fairly decently, just for at least 6 laps or so. Yeah, there have been a couple of instances before then when Max was getting a little bit frustrated, but he did keep it in relative check. But then the restart happened, Max got a tank slapper in the final corner, and there's a miracle he didn't go spinning into the wall and then completely be eliminated, and then get another safety car. But then you got Charles Leclerc and he duking it out in the start-finish straight. That turned out to be nothing. But it was down in turn 1 with George Russell where things really flared up, and I think it could have easily been avoided as well. This is one of those rare instances where GP made a wrong call, which really made things worse for Max. The stewards didn't flag this situation with Russell immediately, but Max's engineer jumped the gun and, perhaps because of what happened in Jeddah, told Max to give the position back just in case. Big mistake. Max knows the rules better than anyone. Even the stewards went on to confirm that the call to give the place back to George was premature. And yeah, Max clearly had had enough, his P3 ultimately becoming P5 through no fault of his own. And it was claiming that amongst all of the chatter that in the confusion regarding who should be giving what place back, that George and Max were busy changing racing lines and then they just completely went into each other. But quite frankly, the stewards were not buying that, basing on the radio transmission, and Max got a 10-second penalty, and that ultimately meant that he fell from P5 to P10. Only 1 point to his name, and now he is nigh on 50 points behind Piastri in the championship. It's looking not that great, unless McLaren have a huge chunk of unreliability. And considering how fragile the Mercedes power units have been with the customers and the works team, it could easily happen in the not too distant future. But for now, Piastri, I can't remember the last time Piastri DNF'd a race. It's been that long. But also, I feel like this is yet another instance where Red Bull, through some kind of strategy snafu or something that results in Max getting a penalty, means that the Dutchman has lost points. But my thoughts. Red Bull made Max crash out like that. There. Verstappen's talent dragged that car and strategy to a podium. But the decision to bring Max in for hard C1 tyres, yeah, that would have just completely lost it for him. He lost out on so much more. But when it comes to the penalty, the 10-second one, that was on Max. It was unnecessary, but not surprising. And many people keep saying that, oh, Max Verstappen is like an Ayrton Senna. No, he's not. Max Verstappen is like another Michael Schumacher. I was a Schumi fan, I still am. And I really am more than happy to admit that there were moments throughout Michael's illustrious career where he made some moves which made everyone just go, what was the point of that? I mean, I'm not going to be talking about Adelaide 94. I'm talking about yeah, Rascas 2006. Yeah? That was one of Michael's lowest ebbs. I mean, that was, I'm not going to lie, pathetic and desperate against the rampaging Alonso. Yeah, Michael's overall success softened those moments because there are a lot more good instances than bad ones, including being disqualified from the 97 championship for barging into Villeneuve hoping to take him out. But Max is proving to be just that the generational talent aspect No question. Because I imagine that if there was social media around and Michael Schumacher was doing all of that stuff back in the day, oh, he would have been completely torn apart. People saying that, oh, he should not be allowed to be racing. That's where I think I am right now. That Verstappen, he'll be quite ruthless, but just like Michael was ruthless. And unapologetic. But I get why it happened. And now he's within 1 penalty point of getting a race ban. So what's he going to do? Is he going to maybe just take the ban? Therefore, he just wipes his slate clean and then just move on? Well, I mean, the championship is looking less likely. Who knows? And then Kimi Antonelli. Oh, this triple header's been not kind to him, has it? Spain resulted in yet another heartbreaking race. And again, proved that the W16 is not all that reliable. The rookie did show promising pace. He made it into Q3. It looked like he was going to be getting a decent clutch of points, maybe P7, getting past the 50-point barrier on the third time of asking, but it wasn't meant to be. Another power unit related issue caused him to retire from the race, and he was the one that instigated the safety car again. At the same time, though, Antonelli did later reflect that he did feel good in the Mercedes and that he had consistent pace on the medium tyres like Russell did. But the last 3 races have been a reality check for him. He's had a great start to the year, but this last month or so, it's been a reminder to him and to us all that he's got a lot left to learn and there will be hardships along the way. And hey, much like how Max had trouble at the beginning of his career, he did come back stronger, and I think the same thing will happen with Kimi. Give him time, he's only 18. But one who I think doesn't have much time left is Yuki Tsunoda. The reality of the second Red Bull seat curse most likely dawning on him. Even though Max defended his teammate, him saying that he was no pancake, that's a Dutch colloquialism, by the way, for someone who's considered incompetent, that was it for defense. Max basically then saying, it is what it is. Because Tsunoda, he's now no longer on the same spec of machine as Max Verstappen, and the team are now, once again, same old, prioritizing the likes of Max. That means he can win a world championship, or at least try. And it really didn't help that Yuki was then beset with a strange issue, which resulted in him only being able to qualify P20. And then this was confirmed that there was indeed an issue. They made some setup changes, he started from the pit lane, and then it turned out during the race his pace was relatively decent. He was taking names up the order. He ultimately finished P13, so it wasn't all that terrible. He could have been on to score points. In fact, Christian Horner said that was the plan. It looked likely he was going to be repeating what he did at Imola and maybe get a point or two to his name. But then unfortunately, going long didn't work when the safety car came out and he was just then swallowed up with everyone else. But according to Tsunoda, he has been able to find something as to why he has been struggling, that maybe Canada might bear some fruit, that he might be able to get something at least a little bit higher than P8, or at least score at all. But again, this is not boding well for his long-term future because Isack Hadjar's really coming on strong. Again, 4 points finishes in the last 5 races, and at the team that Yuki Tsunoda was the bastion of. I want Yuki to do well, but I'm still in the belief that, hey, he gets 1 year. If it doesn't work out for him, it doesn't work out for him. At least he had a chance. But he really does need to score now. Come on, Yuki. And another entity that didn't score was Williams. Yeah, the team were going into this weekend with not much hope of scoring, but it must have been a galling experience in Spain all the same. Val's admitting that it was even worse than imagined. Well, indeed it was. Burning through nearly all of your spare front wings must have been a really traumatic experience. I mean, sure, it can't hold a candle to burning through millions and millions of dollars of broken chassis, but it must have been a little bit like, getting flashbacks of last year here. And yeah, ultimately, it meant that Albon, he went through 2 of them. They boxed to retire the car. He wasn't on to score points, so maybe it was for the best and all concerned that he didn't go through yet another spare front wing, meaning they might have been a little bit short in time for Canada. So you gotta save what you got. Carlos wasn't able to capitalize on the home advantage. He was qualified P18. He didn't really make much of an impact. So yeah, this was a bit of a dreary reality check. This was a mom spaghetti weekend for Williams, in that sure, they've had a huge uptick in pace, but they're not fully back yet. That James is right, that this is not a guarantee that Williams is back for good. There will be tracks that will be a lot more forgiving. Canada, for example, I think will be really good for Albon because he's been able to score in a Williams that was far more fragile and far less performance-driven. So they will rebound, but there will be instances like Spain where Williams are just complete no-hopers. This was, put simply, a bogey track for them. Much like how it was for Haas. Having gotten to witness in real life the hopes of the Haas chap, this was not a fun weekend for either Ocon or Behrman. And after the race, Komatsu said it himself. It wasn't a very good day. Tactical calls, they were very weak in my opinion. Such as not making the most of the safety car and pitting in Ocon for maybe a chance of a cheeky point. And then maybe not trying to adapt after Behrman got a 10-second penalty with, you guessed it, Liam Lawson. And it really didn't help. Like with the Williams, the car just really struggled in the high-speed corners, meaning they weren't really a threat to anyone. They finished right near the back. But I don't think right now they'll look too badly at this. Come on, a couple of years ago, they were complete no-hopers. They were in no real position to be fighting for anything. They are still within the mix, and both of their drivers are in a case of fact-finding. Ocon is rebuilding after realising that his self-esteem was being compromised by Alpine. It wasn't all him, so he's going through a bit of a reconstruction arc, whereas Behrman, he likes the car. He's enjoying his time with Haas. He's finding lots of pluses being there. It's just, unfortunately, he doesn't really have that pace in that car to be able to go toe-to-toe. It's qualifying that's becoming an issue. He's still quite chipper. He's still quite perky. The atmosphere within Haas is still pretty great, but they're still lacking in places. Yeah, Sauber, Racing Bulls, they are catching up. In fact, Racing Bulls have surpassed them. And it's Isack Hadjar that's leading them in doing so, and catching maybe the attention of Red Bull Racing. Please no. To find out why I don't want Hadjar to be going up to the senior team just yet, watch this video next, straight after this one.